Let's go!
Thank God it's Friday!
Begah!
Welcome one and all to the Young Turks. I'm John Idarola, and although this is not a power panel, we do have someone quite powerful joining us on the show. Nina Turner, how's it going?
Hey, John, it's going well. The Black Pearl Dragon is in the house. I'm on the road, so I am in the nation's capital right now.
You are the nation's capital. Okay, well, hopefully the building you're in doesn't suffer some, renovation work without much notice. Or I heard DC is it's just Mad Max in terms of crime. Has that been your experience, or did Donald Trump get a handle on that?
I think President Trump got a handle on it, John.
Okay, good. Well, small miracles. But anyway, very glad to have you here. As we were prepping to go live, I was like going over in my mind what I was gonna say for the dropping it. And then I remembered not technically a power panel, also because Cenk is out of town. But I still think we're gonna have a lot of fun, not only because we have you, but also because we have some awesome stories that I think you're gonna be really interested in, including updates on the New York mayoral race. We've got some developments over in Gaza, and just a lot of terrible money, a lot of corruption, a lot of blatant criminality. It's America, it's 2025. So we're gonna dive into it. Everybody out there, if you're watching live, definitely give us a little algorithmic boost, hitting the like button and all of that stuff. But with all that said, Nina, you ready to do this thing?
I'm ready, John. I just want to say, I hope people know I was joking when I said President Trump got a handle on it. I mean, I was just here. I hope they know, John. I was just here last week and I saw the National Guard out in real time. I'm in the Navy Yard area and it was just really surreal. And all they were doing was huddled up among themselves having a conversation. I mean, you want to talk about a waste of time and a waste of resources, but here we are. But I just wanted our audience to know I was joking.
I definitely got that. Yeah, okay. Definitely a waste of time and resources, and also while the government is shut down. But all the stuff he likes still seems to get funded. Weird how that works out. The important things like conquering America and building ballroom, that always gets funded. I literally don't even know how that's possible. I'm gonna have to put like a little blade sticking out from it just to train myself, I cannot believe how often I do. I don't even know when I cut off. So I'll just say
we need some funding for your mute button.
It's the most sensitive mute button. Blue, come on. Anyway, let's jump into the first story.
Same answer. Why are you refusing to endorse? I have not refused to endorse. I've refused to articulate my position, and I will momentarily at some point in advance of early voting.
Well, that was very clear. It's not that I haven't endorsed. I haven't made clear whether I'm endorsing or not. But of course, endorsing a person is an affirmative action. And if you're not doing that, if you're not actively doing the thing, then you haven't endorsed Hakeem Jeffries. But whatever, muddled language aside, the momentarily did come. And although that video was just earlier today, he did actually finally endorsed Zohran Mamdani in the New York mayoral race, putting out a statement to the New York Times. I mean, why do it on video where somebody could quote you? He clearly doesn't want video of him doing it. Anyway, he said in this statement that he acknowledged that the two men had areas of principled disagreement, but he said that Mamdani had won a free and fair Democratic primary and emphasized that the party needed to unite against an existential threat from President Trump. He says Zohran Mamdani has relentlessly focused on addressing the affordability crisis and explicitly committed to being a mayor for all New Yorkers, including those who do not support his candidacy. He added, in that spirit, I support him and the entire citywide Democratic ticket in the general election. And first question is gonna go to you, Nina. Should we just accept that he finally did it? is it being petty to acknowledge that he undercut it in every possible way in that statement? What do you think?
John, let's be petty, okay? I love me some good petty. First of all, the man's endorsement is irrelevant and it's insignificant. You got about 12 days before the election. You know what happened, John? I'm old enough to remember when neoliberals like him wanted to force progressives. And I think the slogan was vote blue no matter who. And then you have Assembly member Zohran Mamdani win the Democratic primary, just straight outright. And all of a sudden they want to change the rules. Who needs his endorsement? I would say to Zohran's team, they don't need this man's endorsement. He's just trying to cover his behind at this point. It is half-hearted. And then when he says that Mamdani has convinced him that he wants to be the mayor for all New Yorkers, even those who didn't vote for him. Well, no sugar, Sherlock.
Yeah.
Everybody running for office. You know, when I ran, everybody didn't vote for me. However, once I took that oath of office, I had to serve all. So that's not some big epiphany here. The man, John, you tell me what you think. He might as well have not endorsed as far as I'm concerned. His endorsement means nothing.
Well, hold up, because in this next graphic, Ken Klippenstein put this out. The New York Times says that his support provides a late boost. And the New York Times said, and he clearly needed it. He needed Hakeem Jeffries' support there. Yeah, no, I love your point about the vote blue no matter who. We need maybe somebody who has a better grasp of the English language can tell me this. We need a term for when there's an expression that sounds universal, but in practice is very much not universal. Like I've always said, we have this, they used to talk about political correctness. That sounds like a universal thing that you could apply to anyone. Nope, doesn't apply. If you were to insult Christianity, right wingers would be mad about it, because you were being politically incorrect, but then they would complain that you were requiring them to be politically correct. Like it doesn't actually apply both ways. Vote blue no matter who is the exact same thing. It doesn't mean vote blue no matter who, it means vote establishment even if you don't want to. That's literally all it means.
That's all it means, John. And let us not forget, you know, I gotta bring up, and I know you remember her, and I know she interviewed many times on TYT, Sister India Walton from Buffalo, New York, another example. She won the primary straight up against the incumbent, but they found a way to put the incumbent on another line in Buffalo. And unlike what's happening to Mamdani, they walked her down and they beat her.
They did, yeah.
And not a whole lot of people talk about her. I know Buffalo certainly is not as big as New York, but I want to remind our viewers that we've been down this path before where neoliberals refused to accept that the progressive won the primary and did find other ways to try to thwart their ability to win. What Mamdani has that unfortunately India Walton did not have is, you know, just the wind under his wings, more time. I surmise that he owes a lot of the victory that he is about to have to people like India Walton, to people like Senator Bernie Sanders, to people like Senator Nina Turner and other progressives who went through the fire way before him. So let's not get this twisted. The neoliberals will try every single tact to stop a progressive from winning. And sometimes they are successful. John, would love to know your opinion on this. I think they're not gonna be able to stop him from winning, but I believe that they're gonna try to stop him from governing, or at least gum it up.
Oh, I definitely think they will. And you know, similarly, I was saying for a long time back, you know, during candidate.
Oh, that sounds so good.
I know it did sound so good. Sorry, sometimes I dream live. But anyway, that had he gotten into the presidency, they would have tried. The Democrats would have worked with Republicans to gum it up, and the Supreme Court would have just done it. Like it would have been. But whatever. So what? We still gotta fight. We gotta get the best people in. But they will definitely do that, and their hope will be that we can make it look like a failure, or at least pitch it as a failure, as a cautionary tale against anyone in the future. And by the way, maybe it'll be a failure. Maybe. But I would love to actually try it out. And much more importantly than whether I would love that, the people of New York clearly want to give it a try. So the fact that they can't trust these so-called Democrats to actually respect the will of those voters is, I think, ridiculous. To talk about, he's explicitly committed to being a mayor for all New Yorkers. He didn't need to do that. You guys were questioning that. He never gave any reason to believe he would be anything other than that. In fact, I'm gonna flip that around on you. When you guys keep putting forward these people who clearly only care about the interests of the top 1% of New York, they should have to explicitly commit that they're actually gonna represent more than just their wealthy donors. And clearly Cuomo didn't convince enough people that that's what he was going to do. When they're like, well, I guess he won a free and fair Democratic primary. That is the most begrudging BS you can put in there. And we do need to unite against his existential threat. Look, Hakeem Jeffries, I understand you're supposed to be the master of strategy. After all, you're Democratic leadership. I'm just some jackass on YouTube. But like, he's gonna win. You are endorsing him. So if you're gonna do it, at least get some of the benefit of that by not spitting in the face of all the people that support him. The reason that he's so much more popular than even a well-known established figure like Cuomo. It's like you're getting the worst of both worlds. You did it too late, you did it begrudgingly, and you're making it clear to his supporters that you're not learning any lessons from this, and you're damn sure not gonna apply them to any of the other races going forward in the midterms. And so, look, I don't want to go from petty into 100% hostile, but this is almost as bad as not endorsing him at all.
Let's go.
In some way, it might be worse.
Let's go. I mean, let's go there. They go there all the time. I would have more respect for Congressman Hakeem Jeffries had he just looked in the camera and said, you know what, I don't care, New Yorkers, y'all voted, but this ain't my guy, and I'm just not gonna endorse. Yeah. But he hemmed and hawed, he made up all types of excuses. And he was hedging, John. I believe he was hedging to see if Cuomo would pick up some steam so that he could go the other way. But since that did not happen, here he is literally in the 11th hour.
Yeah.
Endorsing Zohran Mamdani. I hope that no New Yorker falls for this and understand what type of leader he is not. And I do understand somebody or a group of somebodies are running against him in 2026. I think some of this is his self-interest so he can just check off a box.
Yeah.
But I hope whoever is running against Hakeem Jeffries, I wish you a lot of luck. Cause I could deal with somebody better if they just straight up about they mess, but he's not. So he lacks courage and intestinal fortitude, and he definitely does not believe in the will of the primary voters in New York, because if he did, he would have endorsed him a long time ago.
Yeah, it's so frustrating not only to see them maintain their positions in leadership after 2024, which is like, come on, man. We just got done with the WNBA season. And a couple of the coaches that couldn't make it done, they got fired, okay? One coach got fired, they won the championship last year, but they failed this year, so they fired their coach. It might have been a little bit harsh, but like at least some people are looking for new ideas. The Democrats are like, the Titanic is already sunk. It's now descending deeper and deeper, and they're like, no, not yet. I think still Schumer at this point. Like, what has Schumer gotten us that we have this loyalty, or that we're supposed to have this loyalty? And by the way, why is it that Mamdani is so much more popular than a corporate Democrat? Why is it that AOC is so much more popular than Chuck Schumer? Why are we not supposed to draw any wider lessons from any of this about what people want? We're definitely not supposed to draw any lessons from what happened in 2024. And we're definitely not supposed to apply any of these lessons to 2026 and especially 2028, when they're hoping Donald Trump maybe won't run again, or maybe will, or maybe his heart will have exploded in his chest or whatever. And then we can just get back to normal Democratic stuff. We slip Gavin Newsom in there. You know what? Maybe we didn't get Cuomo, but we'll get the California version or whatever. That's what it feels like at this point. And
yeah.
Sorry, continue.
No, at their own peril, they refuse to learn a lesson. And in any other industry, somebody like a Hakeem Jeffries or a Chuck Schumer would not maintain their position. I mean, how do we expect the same group of people who got us in this mess to get us out of this mess, especially since they have not learned any single lesson whatsoever? I hope the Democratic voter, the primary voter and the general, but especially the primary voters, that they remember this. The Democratic faithful, John, who are being failed by these people. They could have done a better job when they control both chambers of the United States Congress, and they also controlled the presidency, and they could have wielded power. I don't like 99.9% of the things that President Trump is doing, and I know we're gonna start to talk about some of this other wild stuff, but I tell you what, he using power. And he not making excuses about why he can't use that power. The Democrats had the same opportunity. He could have expanded the court. They could have done away with the filibuster. They could have increased the federal minimum wage from $7.25. They could have passed the John Lewis voting rights. I mean, John, you and I could spend our whole hour together talking about how they could have used raw power to change material conditions, but they did not do that. And now you have somebody running in New York, as you said, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, who is talking about the affordability crisis, the suffering of New Yorkers, and then these people got the pure unadulterated gall to hedge.
100%. There's only one or two other little things I want to mention, just that Eric Adams has endorsed Cuomo as of today, saying New York can't be Europe, folks. Those Islamic extremisms that are burning churches in Nigeria, that are destroying communities in Germany, that have taken over the logical thinkings. That is a direct quote, and that's what I'm fighting for. Because Mamdani, who literally just talks about affordability, he's a Muslim radical, basically Muslim Brotherhood. He's gonna burn down the whole goddamn city. It's absolutely absurd how they can slander these people. But as bad as that is, one of the other things he said, I thought said more about the way he and Cuomo and probably Hakeem Jeffries think about all this. So Adams had previously deemed Cuomo a snake and a liar, but I guess a snake is better than a Muslim, I suppose, before dropping his election campaign. And Adams said, brothers fight, but when families are attacked, brothers come together. Now they want you to believe that that's like when New York is attacked or whatever, we come together, but New York is picked. They don't want you, Eric Adams, and they don't want Cuomo. So that ain't the family. I know what the family is. It's the establishment. It's the donors. When the donors are attacked, the donors paid and bought warriors go out there and they come together and they fight. That's all it is. And they're doing it against Mamdani. They did it against you. Buttigieg dropping out in Super Tuesday. They did it to Bernie, and they're gonna do that. Like, we can't expect that they're just gonna lay down and allow us to take over the party or whatever. But we can acknowledge that that is what they're doing. They have solidarity, but it ain't with us. It ain't with the city. It's not a demographic thing. It is a class thing. It is an ownership thing, and they're being very clear in this case about that. Any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, the ruling class. There are two classes in the United States of America: the ruling class and the working class. It's the rest of us. And yeah, he's answering to his owner donors, just like most politicians do. And your point, John, about the snake being better, yeah, he has chosen a snake. He's not saying that he doesn't believe Cuomo's not a snake anymore. He's just saying, I'm siding with my brother, who happens to be a snake and a liar. His words.
His words, yeah.
His words.
Exactly. Yeah, and I like your point about there's the two classes, the rulers and the ruled. And if you want to know which you're in, soon you'll be able to find out. The ones who get invited to magnificent ballroom are the ruling class, and everyone else is us. That's how it's going to work. Anyway, we're gonna take our first break, answer some of your comments and questions, and get to more news after this.
Shohei Ohtani.
A snake before you took me in.
Damn, Bart, that was fast getting that. I like it. Okay, so let's see what's going on out there in the audience. By the way, I'm gonna mention this on the other side of the break too, but the bonus episode today is members only. So just a little heads up, everybody that's watching right now. Okay, in the members comments, David says he's only endorsing now because he knows he's gonna win and he knows he has to put something out to soften the blow when he realizes he's cooked. I agree. I will also say, in that case, it's kind of pathetic that, again, it took this long. The polls have been pretty damn clear. Was he thinking that maybe that final debate would have some sort of bomb that would, I don't know, blow up the campaign? I don't know, but he waited a really long time. Don't shoot, I'm the goalkeeper says New York can't be Europe. Where did most New Yorkers come from again? True, but he means it used to be great and then the Muslims destroyed it. That's what Eric Adams is saying, because you can just say that. Totally acceptable to just imply that everywhere Muslims go, they destroy societies. You're allowed to say that. Cray Cray Souffle says, I love it when our Dragon Daddy and, 2 minutes. I thought I had 2 seconds left. I was like, that was the fastest break ever. Cray Cray Souffle says, I love it when our Dragon Daddy and Black Pearl Dragon light the political landscape on fire. I do too. It's always great to have you here, Nina, and on the damage report. Okay. Hannah Hartman says, Nina, I'm sitting here with my sister from Cleveland. That's awesome.
Yes.
Wolf Dragon Donna says 100% Nina. Jeffries' endorsement of anyone at this point is irrelevant and insignificant.
Right.
And there's a need to point out that we have principled disagreements. Yet, no, like you're gonna disagree with every candidate. We get that. An endorsement doesn't mean you agree with literally everything that they've said.
Right.
It's just more hedging and more.
Because he got to answer to his owner donors, John.
That's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Oh, in this statement, and also I'm sure with the dinners he's gonna have with them and the phone calls he's gonna have with them. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, on Twitch, Rolsan says, drop it like an out of shape and condition ICE agent on a chase. Damn. Ford Country says, drop it like the East Wing of the goddamn White House. Oh, that's sad. Okay, Dev says, neoliberal endorsements at this point are to curate their image to the larger public. It's cowardice.
Come on.
Yeah. And it's not even the first form of the cowardice. It's what they eventually retreat to. Green New Dealer Dragon says the corrupt corporate Dems want to wait till the ship is cracked in half before they admit, yeah, maybe we should have replaced the 1,000-year-old at the wheel. Yeah. Green New Dealer Dragon says it took neolibs losing to Trump twice. Well, I don't even know what the end of that sentence is because they have lost to him twice, and I don't know what it took. Nothing's what's changed.
No.
Are they saying 2028 we're gonna have a progressive? No, they're gonna fight to the death to stop a progressive next time around. We'll be right back. Welcome back, one and all, to the first hour of the Young Turks with me, John Arula, and Nina Turner. Nina, as always, glad to have you here. As I said in the break, just in case, bonus episode is members only today, so just something to bear in mind. And with that, why don't we jump into more news? This footage that you're seeing right here was provided by the IDF, and right there, they're marking the quote unquote yellow line. So that's the part of Gaza that Israel now controls, or I mean, since effectively they're gonna end up controlling all of it. It's the part that on paper they're admitting that they control. Although, as we're going to describe in this clip, it's actually a little bit more expansive than that. By the way, the portion that they're formally saying is now theirs is over half of the territory. So be clear about that. After the genocide, after all of that, at least for now, and we'll see what happens, they have taken more than half of the territory and destroyed much of the rest of it. Palestinian civilians are already forbidden from crossing the line. And according to some members of the Israeli government, including the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, he believes that anyone approaching that line, man, woman, and child, should be shot if they even approach it. Not if they attack, not if they're belligerent, just if they get near to it, they should be gunned down, which in his defense is a continuation of much of the policy that we've seen across Gaza for a couple of years now. So maybe this isn't that different from the status quo. But this is according to reporting from Israel's Channel 14. So there was this cabinet meeting, a bunch of members of the government are discussing it. And the deputy chief of staff said that the Israeli army is firing at adults who cross the line, but not at children and donkeys. To which that national security minister said, "We must shoot at a child and a donkey too. Enough with being merciful and accepting what happened until October 6th. And just imagine what is going on in the bounds of his skull, that he thinks what we've had up until this point is mercy. Since October 6th, decades leading up to October 6th, he thinks that was merciful. They were going easy on the Palestinian people at that point. So not everybody agreed. There is some disagreement. So let's go through a couple different perspectives that were given across at that meeting. The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development said, "We don't have to jump straight to saying we need to shoot at everyone who approaches the fence. The military people are here, and I really hope they're not listening to you." So that's good. Although it was just, we don't have to jump to saying we're gonna shoot everyone. It's not ruling out shooting kids potentially, but it's still better than Gavir, who then doubled down saying, "Yes, we must shoot. Anyone who approaches needs to know they're taking a risk." And here is the actual defense minister, Israel Katz, said, "Anyone who approaches the fence needs to know they will be harmed." So we're gonna pause there for a second. So this is the national security minister, defense minister are both very clear. We are gonna gun down anyone who comes there, and also donkeys too, I suppose. We're gonna shoot them. If we see a kid, we're gonna continue to shoot them on sight. And they call it peace, Nina. This is both a ceasefire when they're explicitly saying, no, we're looking for all the ways that we can continue to fire. And this is a peace deal brought to us by the peace president, Donald Trump. What do you think?
As chilling as what Ben Gavir and the others have said, it is, John, it's more of the same. It's more of the status quo. But it is absolutely chilling that even in the face of a so-called ceasefire, that they had the pure unadulterated gall to say these things. And I call on President Donald J. Trump in this case to check them on this. Some of that bravado that the president has should be used in this case. And he should make it clear. Like, are there ways for us to use the president's bravado to the good? He should use that to make it very clear that this is totally unacceptable. Now, whether he will, I doubt that he will, but I would love for him to check them on this. And the entire world should be, just mortified. It is more of the same. And then to take half of the Gaza Strip when already you had almost 2 million people already in an open air prison. The Gaza Strip as it exists before they came in and bombed, about 100% of it was already too small for that number of people. And now they're gonna take half of what was already too small, John?
Yeah.
How is this okay? And to remind our audience that I'm not just outraged by this in this moment. I was outraged from the beginning, and that most of the terror that the people of Gaza, the Palestinians, have faced heretofore, most of it happened under President Joseph R. Biden.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. You also, but like, you're not just critiquing, you're also providing a path forward. Donald Trump loves to throw his weight around, and he also wants to get a Nobel Peace Prize.
That's right.
So he could easily say, you shoot one innocent child, your funding's cut off.
That's it.
Yeah, challenge me,
one
test me.
innocent donkey. Okay,
exactly, one donkey. Yeah,
shot.
But you know what? He's not gonna do it. I already months ago, I told him, you should tell Israel, for every child that starves, that's a month of your funding is cut off.
Come on.
He could have done it.
Come on, John.
If he was actually strong, if he actually cared, the issue is that he could do it, but when has he ever used his influence, his power, his time or attention for something based on taking a moral stand? That's not how it works. He does it to personally enrich himself, to pay back his donors, to troll the left. Those are the three reasons that he wields power. And to ensure, permanent Republican governance, regardless of what the people think about it. 4 reasons. He's not going to do it to save some lives, to save some kids. He won't even do it in a callous attempt to assure himself a Nobel Peace Prize. So no, I don't expect that that's going to happen. And on that yellow line, because I implied this earlier, that's not actually the extent of the territory that Israel is controlling. First of all, they've placed the yellow line boundary markers hundreds of meters deeper into Gaza than the actual maps that were released. So they've just stolen more territory with the line, and then they're killing people far inside of the line. So there was a family, 11 people were killed, 7 children, 2 women. That was 125 meters beyond the designated boundary line. And also in some places it's clear where the line is, in many places it's not. And I bet that's just an oversight. I bet that's not to produce a little bit of plausible deniability. So if you start shooting people, they didn't even necessarily know that they were getting close to the bear. The donkey literally can't see the line anyway, but they might get gunned down. So look, I was very pessimistic about the plan. I felt like I needed to express it because there were so few people in the media that were calling it out. And just every day it looks worse and worse. Any other thoughts?
I mean, how is this a legitimate ceasefire, John? So just playing to the president's ego on this, and I know this may be futile, but that's really what I'm thinking in my head, which is, President, you're gonna let Prime Minister Netanyahu make you look like a fool and take away your alpha male status. Even if just for those reasons, John, that he would clap back. Yeah. I would love to see it. And when we think about children and donkeys, that's one level, but every time a child loses a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, a fictive kin member, to take a term out of the Black community, that's still a tragedy because you're making these children orphans. So I know we like to lift up children thinking that it would make these people care more, but they just don't care. So they don't care if it's man, woman, child, or beast. Obviously, they will shoot. So come on, President Donald J. Trump, use that bravado of yours for some good here.
Don't hold your breath, Nina.
I won't, John.
The dude doesn't care,
even if it's for his own self-preservation, don't let Netanyahu punk you, Mr. President.
Yeah. Also, I'm saying you're not going to do it. You can make me look like an idiot. Right. How about that? That's an extra thing for you. But you're not going to do it. That's why I'm so confident to say it. Dude doesn't care. He's not thinking about what's happening in Gaza. He's building his $300 million fancy dancing room. That's all he cares about at this point. Alpha male. He's concerned with ballrooms. That's all he's actually concerned with at this point. But let's turn to some people with actual bravery. We can't expect presidents to be brave, but there are actually some brave individuals in Israel who are standing up to their government and their military strategy in Gaza. One is a 19-year-old named Daniel Schultz, explained in a number of Twitter posts that they are going to be imprisoned this weekend for refusing to join the IDF, saying, at 16, I started learning in a mixed Israeli and Palestinian boarding school. The oppression my Palestinian classmates endured revealed to me the lie of the worldview I grew up in and made me realize that the uniform I believed protected everyone from the river to the sea was actually the biggest threat for my classmates and a symbol of their ongoing oppression. I'm refusing because it is the most human thing to do. In the face of babies starved to death, entire villages violently uprooted, and civilians sent to torture camps, there is no other choice. Israeli society has no chance for rehabilitation as long as Zionism is its inseparable tenet. And that is a 19-year-old who has exponentially more clarity of morality, of values, the ability to express it than 95% of our government, the entirety of our White House, current or former inhabitants. And this is a 19-year-old, and there are actually good people. There are people in this world that care about others. And it maybe comes in the form of being imprisoned because you refuse the mandatory enlistment that they have there. Or maybe it's people on a flotilla willing to risk being murdered or tortured or sexually assaulted by the Israeli government just to try in vain to get some aid to people who are suffering. Those people don't hold positions of power. Those people don't end up as billionaires. We've unfortunately made the choice as a society to continue to reward the worst among us with the most attention and resources and power. But don't let that convince you or fool you into thinking that there aren't good people. There are. What do you think?
Yeah, amen to that, John. And so young Daniel Schultz, thank you for what you're doing. And there probably thousands, tens of thousands of people just like him whose voices and names we won't know. And it made me think about Jennifer Pearlman in Florida. I mean, she ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She's in her district several times. She is Jewish, and she has over the years told the story about the indoctrination and her refusal. That her eyes have been open and her refusals to accept it. So it is people like her, people like Daniel, people quite frankly like Senator Bernard Sanders, who lost family members in the Holocaust and lost, I'm using that lightly, I mean, they were murdered in the Holocaust, who continues to stand up for justice, and others. I'm thinking about Muddir Benjamin, who in DC, I was just with her in her presence, who puts her body on the line with some of her other co-conspirators in that Congress, challenging those members of Congress on a regular basis. You talked about the flotilla. Christian Smalls is in DC right now, putting it all out on the line, and others like him. And we know that Christian Smalls, who was the only black man on that particular voyage of the flotilla, there have been several, who was beaten by the IDF. So yeah, they are people, good people, and we do forget, John. So I'm glad that you brought up Daniel Schultz and other people like him, so that we don't forget that there are tens of thousands to millions of people who are standing up for what is just right and good. And they're doing it in different ways. But people like Daniel, it's not a but, and people like Daniel who are willing to risk jail time. That's a whole another level of sacrifice. And he is very representative of freedom fighters from various traditions who have come before him, come before you and me, and some who are still walking the face of the earth. So thank you for reminding us of this.
Well, with that, we are going to take we think we have time? Yeah. Okay, we'll do one more story actually, and it's kind of related. Let's actually contrast that person willing to be imprisoned for their values with the sort of people that we reward here in America, starting with this.
Congressman, how do you sleep at night?
I sleep great.
There are 2 million people being starved in Gaza.
Ilhan Omar is not pro-America, and frankly, she endorses and supports Muslim terror. We nuked the Japanese twice in order to get unconditional surrender. That needs to be the same here. There is something deeply, deeply wrong with this culture, and it needs to be defeated.
It does. He does, actually. There is something deeply wrong with our culture, and I think it's perhaps best exemplified in the House by people like Florida Representative Randy Fine, who is an absolute trash person. And the issue, the reason that we're covering this isn't to point out the various ways that he's trash. We will remind you of it. He loves Palestinian children being starved to death. I think that should be enough, but we'll give you extra evidence if it's necessary. No, it's not that. It's that he has been in office for a number of months, and despite spending the entirety of that time doing nothing productive, the only thing he's produced is bile. He's getting tons of donations from massive corporations that apparently want to reward him for advocating for the starvation of innocent children and babies. And so Sludge has put together a new report. They did great work in looking into his corporate donors. More than 40 corporate and trade PACs have donated to his campaign committee. Again, he's only been in office for a little bit. It's not like he's delivered massive legislation that they're supporting. His statements on Twitter and in the halls of Congress is all that he's done. And so we've got people like defense firms like Boeing, General Dynamics, the Israeli defense company Elbit Systems. Pretty clear why they're doing that. That's a contractor for the Iron Dome. Health insurance companies like Elevance, Centene, Cigna are also PAC donors, presumably hoping to curry favor with Fine due to a seat on the subcommittee on health, employment, labor, and pensions. You've got Comcast and CVS and T-Mobile. Like T-Mobile does those fun commercials. They spend money on those commercials. They also spend money on supporting Randy Fine, just something to think about there. And so Sludge contacted every one of these corporate PACs to see if his statements align with their values or if they would reconsider future donations. None responded. Because why respond? They've already said everything they need to say in giving him the money. So anyway, we can give you some other examples of what he's done. So on May 2nd, he responded to images of starving Palestinian children with the hashtags #StarveAway and #KeepOnStarving. In December 2023, before his election, he called for halting humanitarian aid and food to the people of Gaza, writing on X, "Stop the trucks, let them eat rockets. There are plenty of those, #BombsAway." A few weeks later, he said Republicans needed to solve America's #Muslim problem. I mean, that's, what am I supposed to pretend that that's not him trying to flip the Nazi thing on its head? Like that's what he did. That's the thing that he's doing there. We need a solution to the problem of the millions of Muslims in America. In September 2024, he celebrated the killing of 26-year-old Turkish-American activist Aysenur Agi by Israeli forces, posting "one less Muslim terrorist" and urging Israel to fire away. So when these activists are murdered, either by the IDF or by settlers, 99% of American media and politicians ignore it and never acknowledge the brutal murders, even if it's on film and there are witnesses and all that, they just ignore it. He decided to celebrate it because he sides more with murderers than activists fighting for peace. So look, there's always people like this in America, Nina, and the Republican Party sure seems to draw a lot of them. But the fact that these massive corporations are like, we want more of this, we're gonna keep you in office, there should be way more shame on those companies.
It shouldn't. Thank Sludge for doing this. It's called corporate responsibility. And that is an area where we, John, and I mean the universal we might not be able to get Randy Fine out of office right now, but we can with our dollars. Use our dollars as our voice. And so a list of those corporations and having different organizations, justice-leaning organizations in this country, take that list and we can boycott these folks, or as many of them as we can, with our money, and letting them know that supporting people like Randy Fine is not fine. And when he made the comment about, let them eat, what did you say? Let them eat bombs or rockets?
Let them eat rockets.
Rockets. Well, yeah, they have been.
Yeah.
And they're eating rockets provided by the United States of America with our tax dollars, which the overwhelming majority of Americans do not want to have happen, especially at this stage. Nobody is ignorant to the fact, John, of what has happened to the Palestinian people. And for him to celebrate, we are the only nation on the face of this earth thus far who have dropped an atomic bomb on other folks. And there's nothing to celebrate about that at all. So something is wrong with these people. But Randy Fine is just the personification of what is wrong with warmongers, whether they be in the United States of America or Israel or any other country. People who grovel and celebrate at the image of bombing other people. John, we should definitely form a coalition of people who check out these corporations, and they need to be boycotted. They need to be called on the carpet. Their stakeholders or stockholders need to be called out as well. Is this, like you said, I'm glad Sludge called them, is this what you support? And they wouldn't answer because they're cowards.
Yeah, and they don't have to answer. They're not going to. I would ask, the voters for Randy Fine, like, how many of you think that you hold deep religious values? Deeply Christian. Why is this guy masturbating over the starving of kids? Like, why? It isn't just that he believes it, he keeps tweeting it.
Celebrates it, yeah.
He celebrates, that's his brand, is I want babies to die. Why are you supporting that? Everyone who's voted for it, everyone who's donated to him. Like, we can identify 40 corporate donors easier than the voters, but like, why is this what you want? And his statement, "Stop the trucks, let them eat rockets, there are plenty of those." So innocent Palestinians, which I know he doesn't think those exist because his brain has been utterly perverted by identity politics. They shouldn't get aid because Hamas has their rockets, which are just about the least effective weapon in the world right now. But regardless, okay, so because they have so many of those, they could just eat those. Why are we showering Israel with billions of dollars? They have rockets and they have food. And they have medicine. They actually have all of those things. They have their own defense industry in Israel. They have a massive and well-funded military. Why are we subsidizing them when they have all of those things? It doesn't bother him at all that billions of dollars that could be benefiting his constituents go to Israel, but it does bother him that a 1-year-old in Palestine would get food or medicine because there's a terrorist miles away. It's a sick and perverse. Our country is plagued by broken men. I still remember there's a 19-year-old in Israel who's gonna go to jail instead of signing up. I have to remember there are good people to balance all this out. Anyway, by the way, it's the great work by Sludge. This story is a reminder, as if you need another. The fundamental problem that leads to all of the other problems in our society is that corporations and individuals are allowed to flood our politics with as much money as they want. The Supreme Court knew what they were doing when they did it with Citizens United, and that wasn't the only one, but that was one of the major recent ones. And until we turn that around, we're always gonna be plagued by people like Randy Fine.
That's right. And what would Jesus do? He would not be doing this. He would be with the downtrodden. He would be with the people who are being overtaken by a system that is cruel and sick. That's what Jesus would do. And so these Christian folks need to be called out. John, these so-called Christians that are in the Congress too, they should be called out as well, because they should check their colleague on this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But they won't do it because they're at the trough too. The Congressional Black Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, all these little caucuses, the Progressive Caucus, as far as I'm concerned, is not doing enough. But I am highly outraged and ashamed of the Congressional Black Caucus, particularly, who even to this moment has not put out a statement against what was happening and continues to happen. They are feckless and they are 100% going against the grain of why the Congressional Black Caucus holds a special position in that Congress as to why the Congressional Black Caucus was created in the first place. I'm not saying they should get all the blame, John, but I am particularly outraged by their silence. They bought and sold too, just like the rest of them.
We're gonna take a short break. We'll be back after this.
Woo! It's up!
Two super quick thoughts. One, you know how everybody's like maybe rightly freaking out about that candidate who had that text message, like, wanting violence for family members of somebody in politics, and like Trump is tweeting about it. Everybody's like super focused on it. Meanwhile, Randy Fine's just like, I want Palestinian kids to starve to death. I think it would be better politically if they were murdered. Nothing, no tweets. So it's just what can you expect? You can say that stuff. Again, you can say it if it's about a Muslim. You can certainly say it if it's about a Palestinian. That's how it works in America. We're a sick society. Also, Mike Johnson, you're a committed Christian. You got any thoughts about the starving kids thing, or is your Christianity just about getting notifications when your son loads Pornhub? Is that the full extent of your goddamn deeply held religious values? Because it kind of feels like it's not worth a damn. What is the actual substantive difference between Mike Johnson hiding behind his Christianity and George Santos hiding behind his newfound Christianity? It's the exact same goddamn grift. That's what it is. Anyway, Constantine Kavira says in a super chat, I think Trump cares more about an innocent donkey than an innocent Palestinian child. I think he cares about building casinos in Gaza for international billionaires, and that's it. I don't think he cares about any mammal, actually. I think he cares about buildings and about getting paid for it. Christina Elisa Brown, hey Christina, sent in a super chat saying, what a great pair, love John and Nina for Prez 2028.
All right now, don't you start nothing. Don't y'all start nothing, TYT.
Rage Rock from Now says, Mike Johnson had no problem expediting the swearing in of Randy Fine. Yeah, no, you swear in the people who will cover up for the elite pedophiles. You block the people who will expose the elite pedophiles. Another mark against his supposed Christianity, to be clear.
Makes sense to me, John. Makes total sense to me.
Jesus. Ged Cusack says in super chat, spending my B-day in Tokyo. The main show starts at 7 a.m. here. Great to start my day with you, John and Nina. Can I get a happy birthday? Happy birthday. I hope it's a great
Happy birthday.
Yeah. Also, what do you mean starting your day off? Weren't you up at like 2 a.m. to watch the damage report then? No, don't do that to yourself. Anyway, Kevin Bard says, is Hakeem Jeffries the most anti-Riz black person in Congress? I am hardly the person to evaluate Riz or lack of it. I don't know. Anyway, let's see. Constantine sent 5 memberships for YouTube. Thank you for that. Very nice of you. Bubba Frank says Mamdani didn't need Jeffries. Jeffries needed Mamdani. Well, I would say I'd go even larger. The Democrats desperately need innovative candidates like Mamdani. He's not the only one, and he doesn't have the only path forward. But they need to be learning from people like him and others. And the best ever referenced my reference to masturbating. I didn't come up with that. I don't remember who did, but they deserve the credit. Anyway, let's be back. Okay, everybody, we've got just a little bit of time remaining in this hour of the Young Turks, so why don't we jump into this story?
Trump 28. Trump is going to be president in 28, and people just ought to get accommodated with that.
So what about the 22nd Amendment?
There's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is, but there's a plan, and President Trump will be the president in 28.
Yes, Steve Bannon is declaring it's gonna happen. Screw the Constitution, screw the law, screw America, whatever. We have to have this one guy in office, and he's gonna be president in 2028. I agree. I think he's likely to be president in 2028 for like 19 days. And then we're gonna kick his ass out of the White House. That's how it worked the last time around. People got a taste of him for 4 years and they had no interest in having any more of it. They hated it so much, they voted for Joe Biden over it. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. Also, pretty rich to take a look at Donald Trump and how rapidly his body is decomposing in live view and assume that he's gonna be around in a few more days. And also, one thing that I think is missed in all this conversation about 2028, if you're a MAGA person and you hear Steve Bannon say that, you probably get excited, right? Like, hey, even more years of Trump. But his reasoning is that the job won't be done. I have a point to make about that, but let's play one more video for you.
President Trump will be the president of the United States, and the country needs him to be president of the United States. We have to finish what we started. And the way we finish it through Trump. Trump is a vehicle. I know this will drive you guys crazy, but he's a vehicle of divine providence. He's an instrument. He's very imperfect. He's not churchy, not particularly religious, but he's an instrument of divine will. And you can tell this of how he's pulled this off. We need him for at least one more term, right? And he'll get that in 28.
It is a little bit rich to hear about Trump being an instrument of divine will from a guy whose face looks like he's been cursed by the Egyptian gods or something. But anyway, if you're MAGA, again, you probably like that. But it is one thing to say, you know, when you're running for your second term, the election's in 3 months, let's finish the job. Do you get what he's telling you? In 3 years, we won't be done. No. Trump's not gonna have done this thing. We're gonna need 4 more years of him. He's telling you 3 years in advance that Donald Trump is not gonna deliver in this term. And he's had 5 years at this point as president. And if he ain't delivered at this point, I don't know why you'd give him a third try. Also, not a big vote of confidence for the Republican bench. There's nobody else now, nor will there be anybody in 3 years that could possibly govern. And in fact, Donald Trump will leave our republic on such shaky ground that not even JD Vance could take over at that point, not even Don Jr. We're gonna be so weak, so bad off that it has to still be Donald Trump even years into the future. Now, of course, Nina, you don't need to tell me, or you don't need me to tell you that the Constitution doesn't allow for this. I will just say, I'm glad that he keeps talking about it, because one of the tricky pizzicky ways they would try to do this is have him run as like the VP to JD Vance. But I don't know, after 4 years of you guys saying that's just a trick to get him in office, I don't think you're gonna fool people necessarily. But what do you think, Nina?
Yeah, I mean, listen, out in the open, the difference between the fox and the wolf. So the wolf is staring us in our face and letting us know, forecasting what they are going to attempt, and they're gonna attempt to do it in 2028. You know, these same rule of law folks that are always preaching the gospel of the rule of law, and you got Steve Bannon straight up saying the hell with the Constitution, the United States Constitution, and there's many ways to interpret the Constitution. I thought the judiciary, that was their job to do that. You know, nothing is new here. It reminds me of the notion of manifest destiny of the 19th century. You know, part of that was about the destiny of Americans to continue to move west, to continue to take the land, you know, in this country from indigenous people, et cetera, et cetera. But this has a flavor of that. He is destined. He is an instrument of divine will. Well, whose divine will? And which deity are you worshiping that now tells you that this right here is okay?
Yeah.
See, so it matters. If you would ask other folks, no, they would not say that President Donald J. Trump is an instrument of divine will. For whom becomes the question. So John, this is wild. But what I do appreciate about them, they telling us straight up.
Yeah. Exactly. No, you're 100% right. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't read like every page of the Bible. Maybe at some point in the New Testament, Jesus is like, you know, I love it when you post videos pooping on your fellow Americans or whatever. You know, maybe that's how it works. Or no, again, not like Steve Bannon posturing as a Christian means even less than like a Mike Johnson, a George Santos. Steve Bannon is a massive con man. He robbed his own followers. Okay, this is not about divine will. This is about billionaire will. This is about extracting as much wealth as possible, tearing down as much regulation as possible, lowering taxes as much as possible. Jesus ain't got nothing to do with this, okay? Right. This is about the top 0.1% getting paid, because all of them have a terminal case of addiction to money, okay? And they're willing to bring us all down with them as they pursue more of it. So anyway, look, bad news for Steve Bannon. Well, assuming we have elections, I suppose. Donald Trump is wildly unpopular because people are paying attention to how stupid his policies are and how ineffective they've been in improving people's lives. It's why, as of right now, he's polling in terms of his people's support for his economic policies. It is the worst any president has ever had at this point in their presidency. It is worse off than he has ever had in all of his presidency, either this term or the previous 4 years. So no, people are paying attention. You're getting what you want. You got your low taxes, your deregulation, but people get that it's not helping them out. And the fact that prices are going up and their healthcare costs are about to explode and the government is still shut down and all Donald Trump can talk about is magnificent ballroom is telling people everything they need to know. He doesn't care about them. He never did. He ain't gonna. Anyway, I was a little bit critical right there of the president. So why don't we turn to someone who is going to fluff the president verbally for a little bit? You can always count on Stephen Miller for that. So why don't we move to our final story?
Homeland Security Advisor Stephen Miller. Stephen, you're such a superstar, Stephen. They called Stephen the other day a very bad name, and I said, you should sue them, Stephen. I think he will. I hope he does.
Let me just say, Mr. President, that this country was going to die without you.
That's the dumbest. Is it the dumbest? No, I can't just say that it's the dumbest thing I've heard. I pay attention to the news, so it's dumb. I will say that it's very, very dumb. And also be very. I'm going to say this just in case Donald Trump watches this. Stephen Miller doesn't believe it at all. Stephen Miller doesn't respect you at all. Stephen Miller is in this for Stephen Miller. He is an utter sociopath. You think he has any more care for you or empathy for you, Donald Trump, than he does for anybody else? He's pursuing his own power. He's pursuing the quest he's had his entire life. Revenge against brown people. That's what this is all about. He doesn't care about you. You saved America. Inflation's higher today than it was at the end of last year. The number of different... The country is in utter chaos. No, not least of all in terms of homeland security. So I know that's what their little meeting was about. Bear in mind, troops are on the ground in multiple US cities. Stephen Miller considers that to be saving America. I think the vast majority of the American public disagrees. So anyway, that's what they're meeting to talk about. So you have this prior executive order that Donald Trump had signed to set up this Homeland Security Task Force, basically trying to go into every state, meddle in their affairs. You don't trust them to deal with their own problems, and end the presence of criminal cartels, foreign gangs, and blah, blah, blah across America. So they're meeting to congratulate themselves on that. And so let's go to a little bit more of Miller on his theory that Donald Trump alone saved America.
This country was going to die without you. This country was going to actually die without you. That's what we were facing in 2024. We've been invaded for 4 years. Our communities were sinking. Our public safety had gone to zero. Cartels were running entire communities. Sex trafficking, child trafficking, labor trafficking was out of control. Overdoses were out of control. The cartels were claiming more and more territory. City services were buckling. This was a country on the verge of dying. And you alone saved it. And when you stepped forward originally in 2016, you started the movement to make America great again. And that means make America great again in every way. And that means safety and prosperity and peace and freedom from cartels and crime and gangs. And your vision and your leadership in declaring war on the drug cartels is the single most successful public safety initiative in American history.
I'm a little bit worried that video might have sent a notification on Mike Johnson's phone. Stephen Miller would have you believe he's a big fan of Donald Trump. Oh, and he believes all that BS about cartels owning territory and blah, 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 whatever. Look, that, Nina, I think it's very embarrassing that Stephen Miller, like, to have the power that he has to do that. And again, to a man that he definitely does not respect. And bear in mind, Donald Trump was being very nice to Stephen Miller in that little video, but behind the scenes, he also mocks Stephen Miller as a complete weirdo. And I've never felt closer to Donald Trump than when he mocks how weird Stephen Miller is, because he's definitely right. But as embarrassing as it is for Stephen Miller to do that, I think, and I know that MAGA will never get this, they can't see it. Stephen Miller is doing that because he has read into Donald Trump that Donald Trump has to hear that. Donald Trump does all of these meetings to get a bunch of people to take turns telling him how great he is. And I think that is one of the saddest things that I've ever heard in my life. If I ever headed up an organization or was elected to office and you saw me doing that with my staff, put me out of my misery, because that is no way to live a life. That is so utterly pathetic. This man is a literal billionaire, has been president twice, owns multiple corporations, and is still so empty inside after all of that, that he needs these people to just compliment him for hours at a time. I just think that is so sad. And obviously, Nina, I'm sure you're more concerned with the substance of how they're invading these cities and the terrible things they're doing in terms of the mass deportation and all that. But just the displays of obsequiousness, the North Koreanness of it all is just utterly pathetic. What do you think?
I mean, it's idol worship. So for all them Christians out there, I mean, they have definitely made this president a god of sorts. And if you have to grovel to the president like that on a regular basis, I mean, you got to question whether or not that's the life for you. Obviously, it is, that proximity to power, but it's creepy, John. I mean, it was hard for me to listen to this again. It's painful, and he talks about the cartels and the children and the pedophiles and the rape. I don't know if he used the word pedophile, but release the Epstein files.
Yep.
Right, he should be #1 on the list or in the top 10 within the Trump administration, saying release the Epstein files if you care so much about this. This is really sick. It is absolutely sick. And in Psychology 101, you learn about the id and the ego. And it's very clear that our president, to a point that you were making, John, has not advanced beyond the me. I mean, those of you who watched Mr. Smith, when he went after Neil and he said, me, and that's the type of president that we have.
Yeah, and the issue is that this is not just like a psychological failing of the president. It matters because these people surround him. They get in that position by sucking up to him, by licking his boots. And then once they're in those positions, they get to do what they want to do, violate the law, violate people's constitutional rights, and everywhere and always personally enrich themselves at the expense of the taxpayers. And he doesn't care if they do any of this, if they break the law, as long as they say nice things to him. It is so pathetic, and it's pathetic and it matters.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is unfortunately all the time we have for the show. But Nina, it is always a pleasure to have you here. I know that you're incredibly busy, and I appreciate you joining us, especially when you're traveling. Thank you.
Pleasure was all mine. Love you guys, TYT.
Thank you. Coming up on the other side of this break, you're gonna have Yaz taking over, joined by Waz. Should be a really fun hour. Again, the bonus episode is gonna be for members only later on after this next hour. So just bear that in mind. We're gonna take a short break. There'll be more after this.
There's one reason why healthcare is so messed up in this country, and that's because of our money in politics situation. Because those industries that are deeply corrupt can just simply purchase all of Congress. And then the problem never gets fixed because of that bribery. Mike.
Yeah, I mean, it's greed, and it's the greed of politicians, right? I mean, so everything they do is dictated by the donors and the money. I mean, I shouldn't say that, not everything. A lot of what they do is, and I do think that there are people who do things in spite of the fact that they have to raise money and often don't get that money and often don't win because they don't, but are in there fighting for ideals that they believe in. Bernie Sanders is certainly an example of someone like that.
I'm back to gaslighting. Did you and I talk about gaslighting on Old School?
Probably.
That boss gaslit all his female employees. People who manipulate others like that make you feel like you're the weirdo. Why won't you punch yourself in the face? What is wrong with you? And you're like, oh my God, I feel so bad. Why didn't I just punch myself in the face and poke my eye out? I'm 47 and I just figured it out like earlier this year.
You figured out somebody was doing it to you, or that you were
that it
doing
was that it would have been happening my whole life and I didn't realize it.
Right.
You want to know the 3 shows that I'm watching lately? Shogun, Anjin-san. Those guys are badasses. Then you go to the Duttons, Yellowstone. Now they don't always do it right, but they are badasses. But the 3rd show has the biggest badasses of all, the Young Turks. Live every weekend. Sick that I was so good. God damn it. Okay, live. Weekdays at 6 o'clock Eastern. That's what I meant. Anjin-san.
How do you know if you're a populist? Easy. Do you work for the donor class? You don't? Great, you're a populist. Okay, so the establishment takes money from the donors and serves the donors. A mainstream media takes money from advertisers, and they are giant corporations themselves, and they work for themselves, and they work for the powerful. If you care about the average person, and you want the average person to have better health care, better wages, a better life, and you hate corruption, congrats, you're a populist.
All right, Amazon Prime members, here's how you can subscribe for free on Twitch. Start by linking your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, and then click that little subscribe or resubscribe button below the stream on Twitch. Scroll down and select the subscribe free with Prime button, and then you're finished. Close out immediately and share your little subscription alert with the chat. Send a cute message along with it, and bathe in the sweet, twitchy, Bezos-funded love. Hashtag Bezos Bucks.
want to try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well.
Hey everybody, it's Yasmin Aliyah Khan, and I'm here with Wozni for your second hour of the Young Turks main show. Woz, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Happy to be on with you guys. Perfect way to end the work week with the family at TYT.
Yeah, it's not so bad. I used to laugh because I usually end up working so much more on Fridays compared to everybody else, but it's really not the worst gig in the world, so I shouldn't complain. Also, I was gonna tell you, my birthday's coming up on Monday, so don't forget.
I will. I won't forget. I'm putting it in my calendar right now.
Put it in your calendar.
I'm not gonna count on my memory to remember this. I'm putting it in right now.
Yeah, I think we're officially in Scorpio season right now. And
Scorpio, okay.
So yeah, not a Libra, but an October Scorpio. And I'll be 37 years old, and 37 for some reason feels very different from 36. I'm usually not weird about getting older or anything like that, but 37 just feels different. Not bad necessarily, but a little bit different. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how 37 treats me. But all right. On that note, we are going to get into it because we have quite a few stories to give you guys tonight. So let's roll the tape on this first one.
You don't have any borders, then you don't have a nation, right? In a sense. So has historically the United States done well under Democrats and Republicans in protecting the border? The answer is no. Trump did a better job. I don't like Trump, but we should have a secure border, and it ain't that hard to do. Biden didn't do it. Those before him did not do it. We should have a secure border, period.
That was Senator Bernie Sanders on Tim Dillon's podcast, admitting that Democrats have not done as good of a job at securing the border as Republicans have, specifically Donald Trump. So the interview was about an hour long. They covered plenty of topics, including the Democratic culture wars, Zohran Mamdani, Elon Musk, crime rates in blue cities, healthcare, all kinds of things. It's probably a lot of the same Bernie talking points that this audience is very familiar with already, but Bernie is talking here to a mostly right-wing audience. Tim Dillon actually seemed receptive to a lot of what Bernie was saying. The comment section didn't seem easily convinced, but who knows if that is an accurate representation of how he was received over there. But for that clip that we just saw, in the lead up, Bernie was talking about the AI industry and the impact that it's likely to have on jobs and the economy. So here's the follow up from Tim Dillon that led to Bernie's response on the border and immigration. It's kind of a long setup though, so it's been chopped up a little bit, cut down for time.
I think a lot of people don't like to see people zip tied in the middle of the street. But they do look at the Biden administration letting in 10 million people and they're suffering and their health care doesn't exist or is too expensive. And they're looking at all the people coming in. So my question is there a position that the Democratic Party can take that is obviously anti-people getting dragged out of their houses, but recognizes that citizenship should mean something, that we should have a border, and that having laws that protect workers is important, and that people employing undocumented workers or illegal labor is driving down wages for Americans?
So in his response, Bernie said that there are about 10 million undocumented people in this country, or roughly 3%. And he said that his own father immigrated here from Poland illegally. So throughout the segment, Dillon said a few times that he did not agree with the inhumane treatment of people at the hands of ICE. He did not agree with their tactics, but he did acknowledge that immigration is a huge issue for people on the right, specifically people who are worried about jobs and wages. So let's watch this interaction about who is really to blame for the unchecked immigration in this country. And it's particularly interesting what Tim Dillon had to say.
What are most of those people doing right now? Are they?
Working hard.
Good.
None of those people should be faulted for coming here.
Okay.
We should start faulting people like Steve Wynn, who run a $1 billion hotel on
and exploit them, right?
On illegal labor. And why aren't we enforcing E-Verify?
Right.
What's interesting is instead of using Steve Wynn as his example for that, he could have just used Donald Trump, because we all know that he is guilty of this exact same thing. But this isn't the first time that Bernie has addressed the idea of an open border and what it would mean for the nation state. So here he is back in 2015 talking to a little baby Ezra Klein.
Open borders. That's a Koch brothers proposal. The idea, of course, I mean, that's a right-wing proposal which says essentially there is no United States.
But it would make a lot of global poor richer, wouldn't it?
And it'd make everybody in America poor. Then you're doing away with the concept of a nation state. And I don't think there's any country in the world which believes in that. I think we have to raise wages in this country. I think we have to do everything that we can to create the millions of jobs. You think we should open the borders and bring in a lot of low-wage workers? Or do you think maybe we should try to get jobs for those kids? So I think from a moral responsibility, we've got to work with the rest of the industrialized world to address the problems of international poverty. But you don't do that by making people in this country even poorer.
So there's quite a few things going on here, but I did like the idea of covering this story because here is Bernie Sanders going on Tim Dillon's podcast. This is a more right-leaning audience. I think he does have some sympathies with the left, and that was clear as I was watching the interview, I think. But his audience seems still very right-wing. And this is just judging from the comments. And again, like, I don't know how actually representative that is of the people watching, but they were very critical of Bernie Sanders on a few different things. He's very old. That kept coming up, and it's true. Like, if we want term limits for Mitch McConnell, that goes for Bernie Sanders too. That's the way it goes. And I think people who argue for that understand that. But also, I think the Democrats, they take a lot of flack because a lot of what we hear from the right is that, the Democrats, they want open borders. They don't believe in borders. They think they just want to let everybody in. And that is not the stance for most people that I know on the left, right? We understand that there should be some kind of border control, that there should be legal pathways to citizenship. And if those pathways are not cutting it, then I would like to see some kind of reform there instead of whatever we're seeing now, which is punishing people who are already here, people who have been here for years, people who are working, people who are paying taxes, all kinds of things. Whatever it is, these people are not the problem. The people who are the problem are the ones who are employing them, specifically, the billionaires who are profiting off of their cheap labor and things like that. So I think it was good that Bernie was able to go there and at least say out loud to a right-wing audience, no, like, it's not good to have open borders. There is something that needs to be done about the border, because at least they would hear that from a Democrat or a leftist Democrat, if not just like a regular moderate Democrat.
So I think there's a lot of things happening at one time here that is causing a bit of a stir, especially amongst people who we call being on the left here in America. What folks need to understand is that Bernie Sanders is the only leftist in the entire United States Senate. And what the left is a worker movement. It's not this identity affinity group. It's not, and it's about workers and what's best for them and their jobs and how through their work they can manifest dignified lives. What the Bernie clip on Tim Dillon is bumping up against on the left in the United States is that, especially amongst progressives and amongst the groups, the activist sort of groups, the issues that get the most energy are the ones that can be painted as racial and identity based. And immigration is one of those issues. And so whenever they hear somebody be like, no, we shouldn't have an open border and we should have a strict immigration policy, or not a strict one, or one that makes sense for American workers, it kind of bumps up against their ideology, dude. Like, literally, the stuff that they get the most animated about is racially based stuff, and immigration is one that you can easily make a case for being race based. And so I think I don't see I think you can disagree with Bernie on the sort of substance of it. Just like, well, there's an easy solution to that. We can make all these people full citizens, therefore not, subject to the precarity of this liminal, illegal, half legal status where employers like Steve Wynn, like Donald Trump, like, many of the other huge employers in this country, that they subject undocumented people to terrible wages, and just because they have this like precarity dangling over them, that they basically exploit the hell out of these guys, and then by doing so are artificially depressing the wages of the modal American worker. Like, you can disagree with Bernie on the sort of substance of it, but to say that, oh, it's ridiculous to imply that we should have a quote unquote secure border, or that undocumented people and their artificially suppressed low wages affect the wages of American workers. I just think you're ridiculous. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, a few things that you said there. I didn't want to interrupt you, but you talked about immigration being a racial and identity issue.
Yes.
Bernie actually, he did address that right after the clips that I showed you, and it was brought up. Culture war drama was brought up earlier in the interview, but Bernie Sanders, in his response about immigration, he did say, something that I hate about Donald Trump that he does is something that authoritarian leaders have done throughout history. And he said, like with Hitler, he demonized the Jews and the Romani people and all these different groups of people that were demonized. And they say, this is the reason why your life is bad. This is the reason why you can't find a job. This is the reason why you can't afford gas or groceries or whatever. All your problems is because of this group of people. But that group of people is usually like already super marginalized, already not making a ton of money, already not any kind of group that has a significant amount of political power. And I thought it was funny earlier when you also said, there's a lot going on with this interview and in these clips. There was a lot going on in the interview. And I mentioned that I had to cut down the question that Tim Dillon was asking Bernie Sanders, because he did bring up quite a few things all at once, and then Bernie would try to respond to everything that he had brought up. So like the interview was kind of hard to parse together, but I didn't think it was necessarily a bad interview. I thought that Tim Dillon was very engaged, and he did bring up a lot of interesting points. And Bernie, again, as I said, he said a lot of the things that we would expect him to say, that we're used to hearing him say by now. But the audience was different, and I think that is huge. I think that really, really matters. It was funny, but one of the big criticisms against Bernie Sanders came from people who were supporters of him or were formerly supporters of him, and I kind of get this, but Bernie, he was, I guess, defending the Democrats, or at least, supportive of the Democratic Party. And they were like, why is he supporting the Democrats after what they did to him? So that was interesting. But any final thoughts before we go to break?
Look, I think like Mehdi Hassan, who I think is a great progressive, like a champion of many of the things that we care about. He said this is the worst thing Bernie's ever said. I can't personally get there. I just think the guy's making the point that these oligarchs, essentially with undocumented workers, oftentimes are just bringing the outsourcing home. That's it. The purpose is to, instead of go bring the factories over there to chase that sweet, sweet cheap labor, they just import it. And I don't think that's some crazy, unhinged, Donald Trump adjacent take. I just don't.
Yeah. All right. So we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more.
Elon.
Hey everybody, we're gonna read some of your comments here in the break. Let's see, over at tyt.com from your member comments. Nerd Ferguson says, I tune in to TYT for honest reporting and the truth. Thank you. Oh, and here they are spewing lies. Yaz is not 37. Come on. Yeah, thank you. I was like, where is this going? That was Nerd Ferguson, if I didn't say it. Remote Dragon says, yeah, not buying 37, late 20s maybe. Whoa, yeah, it's like, thank you. That's very sweet of you. Also, like when I turned 27 on the 27th, I thought that was super cool. Nobody else thought that was cool. And here I am 10 years later. I'm like, I feel like that should have been a bigger thing, but it wasn't. So let's see. Over on Twitch, Raul Raul says, Bernie and Elizabeth Warren are the only ones in the Senate defending workers and regular people. Yeah, it would seem that way. There's not as many of these Congress people who are representing the actual people who seem to be representing the actual people. Texas Dragon fan says, the stupid idiots in Congress, tell us how you really feel, need to actually address the immigration system, give them a path to actually become a citizen. Yeah, and it's kind of bizarre that that's not talked about more than it is, because isn't that the obvious thing that we need to be addressing? But instead, no, we just have ICE people who are just raiding cities and kidnapping people. And we have Velvet Goldmine says, the Trump administration hasn't gone after the employers at all. And I wonder why that could be, because maybe he's friends with all of them. Maybe he is them. Maybe they're still working at his resort at Mar-a-Lago. Who knows, maybe that's a thing. Let's see, new YouTube members and YouTube comments. Okay, Boone Dragon, how much time do I have? Boone Dragon says, heck, I turned 79 in a couple of weeks. It's different, like turning 29 and looking at 30, saying of the day, don't trust anyone over 30. Instead, it is looking at 80, WTF. Congratulations, I mean, happy early birthday. That's crazy, 80, let's see. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. This is the second hour of the Young Turks. You have Yaz and Waz here with you. Waz, before we get into this next story, we're gonna talk to the people a little bit about Chapter. So Medicare annual enrollment is here right now and it goes till December 7th. This time is overwhelming for seniors who are bombarded by junk mail, spam texts, and robocalls. So this year is going to be more of a nightmare with big plans changing and confusion caused by our own government shutdown. So even if you're happy with your current plan, you need to check it out for 2026 because plans have changed and many have been canceled. If you don't shop, you could lose access to your doctors or end up overpaying for your plan or care. Chapter is the only Medicare advisor that looks at every plan nationwide to make sure you have the best plan for your needs. They can review your options in under 20 minutes. If you're on the right plan for you in 2026, they will tell you. If there's a better plan for you, they will help you switch. They save people an average of $1,100 a year. So you can call 707 TYT HELP to speak with a trusted advisor today. And you can see that number on your screen. And without further ado, let's dive into this next story.
In the book, I hope you'll see everything that we're seeing now, ever since childhood, being ingrained in him. And what his one-time girlfriend Grimes called demon mode. He can snap into demon mode, and he's in demon mode now.
How comforting. Elon Musk is in demon mode, which is probably about as bad as it sounds. But what triggered this latest demon mode of his? So as many of you may know, Elon Musk has a contract with NASA to deliver the lunar lander for the Artemis mission. The goal of Artemis, by the way, is to put boots on the lunar ground by 2028. And the lunar lander is what literally lands on the moon and allows the astronauts to then set foot on the ground. But the problem is SpaceX has not been meeting its deadlines for delivery. And by the way, the goal previously was 2027. So they've already pushed it back to 2028. So that's a whole year of delays. Now SpaceX is threatening to delay things even further. So earlier this week, Sean Duffy, our Secretary of Transportation and also the acting NASA administrator, has reopened Elon's contract to other companies such as Blue Origin, which is of course headed up by Jeff Bezos. So here is Duffy speaking about why he's looking elsewhere.
SpaceX had the contract for Artemis 3. By the way, I love SpaceX. It's an amazing company. The problem is they're behind. They pushed their timelines out, and we're in a race against China. The president and I want to get to the moon in this president's term, so I'm going to open up the contract. I'm going to let other space companies compete with SpaceX, like Blue Origin. And again, whatever one can get us there first to the moon, we're going to take. And if SpaceX is behind, but Blue Origin can do it before them, good on Blue Origin. But by the way, we also might have two companies that can get us back to the moon in 2028. But again, we're not going to wait for one company. We're going to push this forward and win the second space race against the Chinese, get back to the moon, set up a camp, a base, and from there, we're going to figure out how we can actually get to Mars.
So Sean Duffy was never supposed to be the NASA administrator, acting or otherwise. The original pick for the role was 42-year-old billionaire and civilian astronaut, whatever that even means, Jared Isaacman. However, earlier this year, Trump yanked Isaacman's appointment, leading Elon to melt down. And you'll remember this because it was during this time that Elon tweeted about Trump being in the Epstein files. He was mad about Isaacman. So here is Elon's biographer, Walter Isaacson, discussing the rift over Jared Isaacman.
Jared Isaacman, who had flown on some SpaceX missions, and Musk knew him, had been nominated to be NASA director. And Trump told Musk, before it became public, I'm yanking Jared Isaacman's appointment. That caused Elon Musk to really go ballistic, so to speak. And it's not because Jared Isaacman is some close personal friend. I've seen them together. They're not pals. But Jared Isaacman is a true test pilot, somebody who's flown in SpaceX vehicles. And Elon strongly believes he's needed at NASA. And Elon is not using the most diplomatic means to try to push that on the administration.
And I will say, just anecdotally, that around these NASA parts where I happen to live, Isaacman was the pick. He was a popular choice here. He's still a billionaire person, whatever, take that for what it's worth. But he was preferred over what we got with Sean Duffy. So on top of everything, Elon is now spinning out again because Sean Duffy, who again is the Secretary of Transportation for the government, is now advocating for NASA to come under the purview of the department that he oversees. So Eric Berger, he's a local meteorologist and reporter here in Houston. He runs Space City Weather, but he also wrote a book on the rise of SpaceX. And he tweeted, the Wall Street Journal report confirms what I've heard about Duffy pushing for NASA to fold into the Department of Transportation. He's meeting with senators. For him, a win-win. He gets to take credit for NASA's success, but doesn't have to run the agency. And Elon responded with, Sean Dummy is trying to kill NASA. Sean, get it? Do you get the joke? Okay, so Duffy, however, is moving ahead. He says that SpaceX shouldn't be afraid of a little competition. Competition is what drives innovation. And in the end, America wins. Elon has claimed that SpaceX is not only not behind on its deliveries, but it's moving like lightning compared to the rest of the space industry. And that Starship will end up doing the whole moon mission. And he said, mark my words. But you know what? I feel like at what point are we gonna learn that Elon Musk is full of empty promises that he doesn't deliver on? Because he knows that if he says certain things, then people will give him money. If he says, I'm gonna do all this and this and this, I'm gonna do it this way, and I'm gonna do it by this time frame, people give him money and say, here, you can do it, you do it. But time and time again, he doesn't deliver. Or if he does, he doesn't do it as well as he said he was going to do it. He doesn't do it on time. And right now he is delayed, or SpaceX is delayed on their deliverables for the lunar landing system. And I wasn't sure how relevant this story would be to the general populist because, like I said, I live in Houston. My husband works at NASA, so this is all like very close to me. So it's hard for me to gauge whether or not people outside of this circle that I exist in care about this stuff. But this is Elon Musk that we're talking about. He's always relevant. People always want to know what he's up to. Whenever he gets too quiet, people get a little bit concerned. But also the idea of looping NASA in under the Department of Transportation, that is a big deal. That would change a lot of things as far as the way that NASA operates. And the way that it operates now, you have NASA proper, but you have all these other giant corporations that are part of like the NASA complex, the greater NASA ecosystem here in Houston. And you have all these contractors who are working there. So right now with the government shutdown, work is moving along, but you have, a huge chunk of the workers are furloughed, the ones who work for NASA, because those are federal employees. And then you have all the contractors who are trying to like move forward without like a huge swath of the workers that they're used to working with and without getting anything, having access to those people or to the work that they've been doing. So the things going on at the federal level absolutely affect NASA all the time. And not just NASA, but also like the medical industry here in Houston, because they outsource a lot. They talk to each other, all these different industries, especially when it comes to life sciences and things like that. So this is affecting all kinds of, between the government shutdown and then the overall uncertainty going on with these contracts, it is affecting real people and real lives. And also, yeah, like it might affect the Artemis mission. And I think Sean Duffy mentioned it in the clip that I showed you, but right now there is kind of a renewed space race because China has recently announced that they are also trying to get to the moon. The Russians have been a little bit busy as of late, but the Chinese are like, we're not, we got time and we have all the resources, we have all the money. So they're trying to get to the moon. So the US is trying to get there before they do for the second time. What are your thoughts on this as a non-Houstonian NASA person?
I mean, I think it's obvious why Elon wanted his own guy in there. And that's precisely for stuff like this, where you guys can go on YouTube right now and look up videos about the amount of times Elon has promised something, whether it be coming from SpaceX or Tesla with the autonomous driving and announced the timeline and a date, or with the Hyperloop here in California. Like, he's announced so many things that just didn't deliver, didn't come through time and time and time again. And Tesla isn't a car company, it's a stock company. And Elon has been able to talk so many people into believing his loftiest goals and ideas. It's why his company is so insanely valuable and inflated. It's not based off of the amount of cars this guy sells, right? And so he's so used to people sort of buying his BS that, the second that it's questioned or it's like, look, we're opening this thing up to other bids, you're looking like you're not gonna be able to deliver for us in time, he blows a gasket. And of course, he wants SpaceX to be tethered to the government because the United States government is the only entity with enough resources to fund this thing. Like, it's not like this thing is making anybody any money, right? It takes somebody with a vast, unlimited amount of resources to fund SpaceX until it could hopefully launch all of these loser billionaires into Mars to never return. It just seems pretty obvious why this guy is pissed. He doesn't want to be held to account to things like deliverables and timetables.
Yeah. Elon is all talk and he kind of understands that, he functions very much kind of like the stock market where a lot of the speculation is what matters, right? So if he promises these big crazy things and he has all these billions and billions of dollars, people say, well, if anyone can get it done, he'll get it done. So they give him money. And that's all it takes. You just have to get through the next funding round and you just do that by making promises. And at some point you would think that they would say, well, he hasn't delivered in the past. His track record is not that great. And it seems like that is kind of what happened here with Sean Duffy reopening the contract, but he can't handle it. But also, like it's important to remember, I think, like I covered this for Rebel HQ also. So I talk a little bit more in depth over there. So you guys can check that out once it's up. But, Elon Musk has branded himself as a genius, and not just a genius, but like a tech genius, right? As a scientific, techie genius man. And he's not really that, like I think he gets away with it because he has.
He's an operations guy.
He
knows how to cut jobs, make things run efficiently, fire people. That's what he did for Tesla. He made them
He didn't build Tesla though, right?
No,
he had nothing to do with the tech. He bought it, right?
Whatever you want to say about Tesla, they were able to make a business out of it, put out relatively cheap cars, put out a decent amount of them. Elon was very instrumental in sort of streamlining that process. So Elon is a good ops guy. That's it.
And somehow with all of that, he managed to convince people that he was a scientist, he's a tech genius, he's a rocketeer, he's a rocket scientist, genius. Like, I don't know. It really is just branding, and it's branding. I feel like should only go so far, and it shouldn't go so far that you're about to make $1 trillion. You know what I mean? So, anyway, we got to take our second break. We will be right back. Hey everybody, welcome back to the social break. We're gonna take some of your comments. Let's see what we have here. Oh yeah, lots of going on. Brunswick Dragon over at tyt.com says the astronauts must be thrilled to rush the process. Yeah, it's not an industry where you would, cut any kind of safety or, but that's the thing. All these things get cut whenever the only goal is a race or profitability or some kind of it's the priorities are never right with these things. All right, over on Twitch, Microgram says Elon has never delivered on anything he's promised on time. Yeah, and you would think that they would learn by now, but they haven't. But I mean, kudos to Sean Duffy for actually saying you're taking too long. Things are we don't have time to waste. We're racing against China. So we're gonna open it up. Dev0094 says, how about instead of focusing on Mars, we focus on protecting our planet instead, ensuring it survives for generations after us. I have mixed feelings on this because yes, I agree. I think we can do two things at once. I don't personally want to go to Mars, right? I don't That's not something that's interesting to me. That's not something that's exciting for me. It's gonna be so cold on Mars, and people don't talk about that enough. So if we all go to Mars, it's gonna be cold and you just have to hang out with Elon Musk. But yeah, like I really wish that more resources were put towards saving this planet, but we know that that's not gonna happen because the same people who are rushing to get us to Mars are the ones who are destroying this planet to do so, because like all these rocket emissions are no joke, and that's nothing to scoff at. So yeah, I get it. Let's see, over on YouTube, Donald Dowley says, somebody asked Trump again, how many of his resorts and golf course employees are still illegal? Yeah, I wonder if he has that number. And then, actually, oh, there it is. We don't have any more time. I'm out of time, my bad. We'll see you in the rest of the show.
Just up my rent last night because Whitey's on the moon. No hot water, no toilets, and no lights, but Whitey's on the moon.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the second hour of the Young Turks. We're gonna wrap up this hour with one, maybe two stories. We'll see how it goes. And also for those of you who are members, I will see you in the bonus episode, and that is members only. So if you're not a member, then maybe you should consider joining because we have a lot of fun over there. Usually do lighter, funner stories, usually, not always. So without further ado, the next story.
Given morning, there's a crisis. And people's lives are at stake. God forbid another 9/11. Can you imagine Mamdani in the seat?
Yeah, I could. He'd be cheering.
It's another problem. But can you imagine that?
No.
That was radio host Sid Rosenberg and former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo making the claim that Zohran Mamdani would celebrate another September 11th. This disgusting conversation has been making the rounds, and now finally Democrats are chiming in, not only denouncing Islamophobia, which is a big deal on its own, but they're also kind of defending Zohran Mamdani, and like coming from the Democrats, that feels huge. So here's the exchange again. He said, God forbid another 9/11. That was Cuomo. Can you imagine Mamdani in the seat? Rosenberg, who had already referred to Mamdani as a terrorist, interjected, yeah, I could. He'd be cheering. After a brief pause, Cuomo chuckled, said, that's another problem, he said. So he was definitely in agreement with what Rosenberg was saying. He was kowtowing to that line of thinking, right? Agreeing basically that Mamdani is an Islamicist and a terrorist, whatever. So Mamdani called the exchange disgusting and an affront to the city's Muslim population. There's a lot of Muslims in New York City. He said, we're talking about a radio show host who's described me as an animal, who's called me a terrorist. We're speaking about a former governor who in his final moments in public life is engaging in rhetoric that is not only Islamophobic, not only racist, is also disgusting, and is his final closing argument with less than 2 weeks before Election Day. Even further, Cuomo did not denounce Sid Rosenberg's comments. Instead, he stressed that they were not his words. He said, that's the host, go talk to the host. So he never said, maybe he shouldn't have said that. That's all he had to do. That's all he had to say. And Sid proudly confirmed that those were his words. He wrote this on X. He said, hey, Brad Lander, Jimmy Van Brammer, and the rest of you losers blaming Andrew Cuomo for my comments. How about coming at me? Andrew didn't say that Zohran Mamdani would be cheering if, God forbid, we experience another 9/11. I said it, not Andrew, cowards. Now, Democrats, even ones who have criticized Mamdani in the past, have spoken out about all of these ugly attacks against him. Representative Daniel S. Goldman posted this in support of Mamdani, saying, there's no room for hate and bigotry in our politics or in our country, and that includes naked Islamophobia, suggesting a Muslim candidate for mayor would cheer for a terrorist attack against the city that he's running to lead. This is what Trump and the GOP want, and we must reject it. Even Representative Richie Torres posted the following. He said it should be possible to critique a candidate's ideas without demonizing the candidate himself. To insinuate that a mayoral candidate would celebrate a second 9/11 is beyond disgusting and disgraceful. We all have a responsibility to lower the temperature and restore a measure of civility to our public discourse. Representative Jerry Nadler also chimed in. He said this is Cuomo's closing message to New Yorkers, making light of 9/11 and stoking hatred against the first Muslim mayor in New York City. Imagine if this kind of bigotry was used against any other faith, Jewish or Christian New Yorkers, would we just roll over and accept it? And finally, New York Governor Kathy Hochul said this. She said, time to get out of the gutter. Fear mongering, hate speech, and Islamophobia are beneath New York and everything we stand for as a state. But Sid Rosenberg, he tripled down on his Islamophobia by posting this. He said, so Representative Richie Torres, Jerry Nadler, all these people, all upset with a comment that I made while cowardly attributing it to Cuomo. I'll be sure to invite all of you to Hug a Terrorist Day hosted by Zohran Mamdani. So much going on here. Waz, I remember when Obama was running for the presidency. What year was that? 2008. And how old was I? I was just out of high school at the time, right? I graduated 2006, so I was barely in college, but I remember paying attention to that election and being kind of nervous that him being Black was going to be a thing that came up. And this was in 2008. So the United States was a lot less overtly racist back then as it is today, right? So even back then that was a concern, but it maybe didn't have to be because I didn't really see a whole lot of it, right? The Republicans, they did not mention the fact that he was Black. It didn't come up. People weren't like on Twitter like they are today, or maybe they were and I just wasn't, but it wasn't a thing, this racial discourse around this Black presidential candidate and president that we ended up having. I think toward the end of his term, that did become more of a thing. And then we saw what happened at the end of his term. We got Donald Trump as a president. And the world was a very different place after the Obama administration as it was from before. And we had 9/11 with under George W. Bush. That was 2001. And even then, it was very even George W. Bush came out and said not all Muslims are bad, which is really a low bar. It's a very low bar, but at least he said it, right? Mm-hmm. And that was coming from George W. Bush. And at the time, I remember being surprised that he said anything at all because he also used 9/11 as an excuse to pillage all of these Muslim countries in the Middle East. And in my opinion, the American people didn't really understand the difference between Afghanistan and Saudi Arabia and Iraq. So they were just yeah, just go do what you gotta do. And so he invaded Iraq. But anyway, all of that, the idea that he's bringing up 9/11 as he's running for mayor of New York City, knowing that that is a soft spot for New Yorkers, but also knowing that there's so many Muslims in New York City. There's so many brown people in New York City who look like Muslims, right? Because if you're a racist, you're not gonna be oh, are you Muslim? Are you from this country before I'm racist against you? Let me know how racist I should be. No, they're just gonna look at you. So it's very tone deaf, and it is very telling also that this is his line of rhetoric 2 weeks leading up to the election. Does he have nothing else to say? Does he have nothing else to run on that he just has to resort to fear mongering and identity politics and just racism and Islamophobia to maybe garner any last minute support that he has? So what are your thoughts, Waz?
It's just striking how permissive we are of Islamophobia as opposed to other forms of bigotry. If somebody went on a show where the guy was Big Waz is a, big nose, watermelon loving, fried chicken eating, whatever, lazy, all of that. People would just be bro, this is unacceptable. And you're an idiot, you're a clown, and you can't be taken seriously. Or similarly, somebody went on a show, or Zohran, God forbid, went on a show where people were making the most vile commentary about Jewish people. It would just be obviously unacceptable and roundly just killed by everyone. And with Cuomo, he's just yeah, I'm fine with going on a show with this level of bigotry and just kind of laughing and nodding along. It's just, I don't know. That's what struck me, is like the permissiveness with which we treat just rank Islamophobia even today in 2025.
Yeah, I do think that there is a coalition between like the Jewish people and then the Christians, especially like the Christian nationalists, because like they have belief systems that kind of coincide with each other. And with the Muslims, I think the Muslims have become like an easy target for those two groups to demonize, even as those other two groups also do get, kind of their fair share of demonization, but also like play the victim a lot of the time, especially like the Christian nationalists are always the victim. And it's like, you guys are running the country right now. Like, we know that you guys are running the country. So it's interesting that Islamophobia is still so permissive in this country. It's so, commonplace to hear brown people be called terrorists. And it's like, why are we doing any of this? It's so lazy. I think racism, anybody who is racist, I think is just like low intelligence, right? Because like you can't conceptualize of the idea of people being people.
Also, Zohran is Indian and not like, I don't know, Saudi.
They're not smart. They're not smart people. Like they're not smart people. That's what I'm saying. Like all they see is a brown person.
Like his mom was making movies about like Kama Sutra and stuff. Like, I don't think this guy's a Muslim fundamentalist, guys.
Yeah,
like,
it's so insane, and like I'm Muslim, but I'm not like we're practicing Muslim. But even still, like I was raised like around Muslim people. And yeah, there's a spectrum of how religious these people are, just like any other group. Like, who knew?
Yeah, it's like not all Christian people are like Amish, like.
Yeah. But Muslims don't get that kind of consideration.
Or you wouldn't look at every Christian person like those fundamentalist people in Utah with the 30 wives and stuff. Like that's a form of Christianity that is way outside of the mainstream, but no Christian politician would ever get up there and somebody's like, yo, are you gonna take multiple wives like the dudes in Utah? Like that makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have to go that extreme though. Like even like in regular American cities and suburbs across America, smaller towns, you tend to see more of it. But just regular everyday Christians who identify as everyday whatever Christians, like not even like any specific extremist denominations or anything like that, but they do have ideas about the world and the country and what it should be that would be considered dangerous to certain people who fall outside of the parameters that they've set and outside of their set of beliefs. And I live in Texas. Like there's so many of these people here that I live around who believe that people like me are lesser than, or who believe that people like me shouldn't have a voice or shouldn't be in office in government or anything like that. And that's just like a thing that nobody really talks about as being extremist. There's no word for it, like Islam, like you're an Islamist person, like there's no derogatory thing to call these people. You can't just like call them a terrorist, So it does feel very lazy to me, but I do want to read a couple of comments before we move on. We're going to wrap up this hour, but there were a few good comments that I didn't get to read in the last social break. So I just want to say, where was the one that I found? Oh yeah, so this is over on YouTube members. Prop said, love the show TYT, but there's nothing fun in our current political atmosphere. And I think that was in reference to me saying that we do more fun stories in the bonus episode. So point taken, and I can't argue with that. And then he says, I live in a van down by the river. And, yeah, that's where we're at in this country. So shout out to Chris Farley on that one. And then YTP Renewed gave us $2.79 Canadian. Thank you very much. And says leftism never had a definition in the first place. I don't know. I don't remember what that was in reference to, but I do think that the left could do better, generally speaking, on defining its belief set. But it's hard because you have to brand it in a way that it sells to people who are outside of it. Not sells, but just so that we can define ourselves. But at the same time, there's a lot of factions of leftism. I think, generally speaking, the reason why I identify as a leftist is because at the end of the day, it's about the people, and I care about the people. And I know that that's not a good definition, but That's what it comes down to. It's I believe it to be more compassionate than what I see on the right. But at the same time, I think the right would actually say that they are compassionate. I don't think that they would see themselves the same way that we see them. I think that they do believe that they stand up for children and things like that because they're anti-abortion, things like that. So it really is a little bit about perspective. And then props, this props again, said, sorry, Musk, unlike the entire planet, ads won't pay for your space exploration endeavors. I'm sure if he could figure out a way to get that paid that way, he would do it. And then Ronald Fan said, happy Friday, TYT family. And to you, Yaz and Waz, happy birthday to you, Yaz. Thank you. I hope 37 makes you feel awesome. And Waz makes me laugh so much. Same here. With that, we're gonna wrap this second hour of TYT and we will see the members in the bonus episode. Be right back.